Hey, what's up folks? Michael here with Primal. Hope everybody's doing good out there. Going old school today. A few years ago, I uploaded a video where I had ran across an old sword cane that my father had. And you can see right here, it's definitely seen better days. And I decided that maybe it was time to do a little customization to it. I mean, after all, can't get any worse than what you're looking at here, right? So I started out with a little sandpaper and some wood filler and just kind of got rid of the really bad damage, the big stuff. All this accessories that you see right here that I'm popping off, these brass tips and stuff, I'm going to be replacing those. I've got bigger plans for this. So let's go ahead and pull the blade out and show you what we're looking at here. There you go. Comes out pretty smooth. Still a surprisingly tight fit for as old as it is. I mean, it's almost a friction fit. That collar right there has a little button on it that you hit to release a lock. Years ago, the mating piece to that's on the sheath, I guess you can call it a sheath, scabbard, what have you. That piece broke and it doesn't really work. It never has really, not in my lifetime anyway. The blade's pretty decent. I mean, it's a novelty thing. This is not a samurai sword. This is not something you're gonna brag about to your friends and say, oh my god, I've got a Hattori Hanzo sword. It's just a novelty piece. But for what it is, it's in pretty good shape. So I thought by dressing up the scabbard and cleaning up the blade a little bit, and then maybe doing something completely cool on the handle, I might actually have something pretty neat. So we're going to take the collar off, all the accessories, everything here. And this is it. This is the bare bones skeleton of what I'll be working with. I'm not going to use any of the other stuff you saw me take off. So I did find this little cool skull. I think this is supposed to be for a gear knob shifter on a car or something like that. I'm not really sure where I got it. But I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of use that as the head. I just needed to figure out a way to attach it, and I have a few ideas swimming in my head, and I will go over those in just a second here. Again, you guys have to forgive me. This is an old video. I found this footage, and these videos are some of my more popular videos on the channel, but they've been around a long time. And if you're new to the channel, the probability of you going that far back in my archives to find it, pretty slim to none. So I thought it'd be kind of a fun walk down memory lane to just kind of jumble everything together in one video here. So what I decided to do was take some threaded rod, epoxy it into the handle, and then of course turn right around and take the head and epoxy that to the threaded rod. I've done stuff like this before with similar materials, and it's worked out very well. And I can tell you, all these years later, 7 years later to be precise, it's still in great shape. In fact, the picture you'll see on the thumbnail is a recent picture of it. And give me a thumbs up if you guys are interested in seeing me just completely tear this thing down and doing something completely different. Kind of a old school Blind Fury kind of walking stick with a hidden sword in it, you know, something like one of the walking sticks that I make. I'm showing off the brass ring here, and it's completely out of frame. I'm leaving it in this video simply just to remark at the difference between where I was back then and where I am now. But again, I'm not using that collar. The friction fit right there, as you see me showing off, is pretty damn good. And I'm going to rely on the friction fit to really accommodate the blade and keep it in place. So sitting here looking at the handle and trying to decide how I want to do it, it's occurred to me that the handle is kind of small, and I do want that skull at the top of it. And when I say the handle small, I mean in the off chance you're ever in a situation where you're going to wield this thing, the handle is really just big enough to hold on to. And as for me, I like to go two-handed whenever possible. Not that this is a two-handed sword, mind you. I just like that little extra length in the handle. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of distance to this, you know, and that's pretty much what I'm going over here. All this will stay the way it is. This will stay the way it is. Everything down here. And I decided at this point that I was going to do an epoxy coating over the whole thing. I had recently done a hiking stick, the original Premier hiking staff. I joke around because recently I ran across a video that was done a few years after mine, and the guy copied tit for tat exactly what I did. and offered them up and was selling them. I just thought that was kind of funny. I just did the epoxy coating on the carbon fiber staff, and I was really happy with the way it came. So I had the bright idea of using the epoxy as a way of hardening some embellishments that I wanted to put on the staff. I never really liked the tip, the way it just kind of dropped down into a bullet. So I started coming up with a really good idea. I knew I wasn't going to use that brass knob anymore, and I thought to myself, okay, I've got some threaded rod here. Let's do something interesting down there as well. Okay, so what we're going to do here is jump ahead a little bit. There's my cute little skull that I plan on using, and can't forget my coffee. Okay, so there was a slight bend in that scabbard. So I drilled a hole as deep as I could, which went down there a couple of inches surprisingly, and filled it up with epoxy, put the threaded rod in, and then put just enough tension to kind of pull that the scabbard back to a what I'll call more straight position. I never really got the entire bend out, but I got a huge chunk of it removed. I'm letting the epoxy dry, and when it's all said and done, I'm going to cut most of that threaded rod out, widen the hole on this wine stopper that I found because I thought the point was pretty cool, and use that as the bottom of the staff. And you'll see that foam behind me right there, that gardening foam like you use if you're making, I don't know, like a fake flower display for your house. That's going to come in handy shortly. You'll see what I do with that there. And you see how that closely fits pretty well, but it's not 100% match. It doesn't match perfectly. I remember vividly you couldn't rely on the threading from that threaded rod and the threads that were in that wine stopper thing. It wasn't going to work. That was going to have to be epoxied in, which doesn't really matter, and you'll see why in just a moment here. Okay, so getting everything together, I cut the excess off. By this time, the epoxy had hardened, and I got a drill bit and trying to get the right size here, getting my drill ready. Started small and drilled more and more until I widened that hole pretty clear here. Safety first, got to remember the gloves. You see me shredding it out, and now here we are. Got everything relatively clean. All the shavings are out, and you see how it slides right over top. That's the fit that I want. That's what I was looking for right there. And that tape that you saw to the side is like that hockey grip tape that you would get. Not hockey tape. It's the kind of tape that you would get to go around your wrist or something if you sprained your wrist. It sticks to itself. So in this area right here, I had built it up with some tape, some of that padding, and I think I even got some cotton in there, which won't really matter in the end, surprisingly enough, because I'm going to wrap the bottom and the top in that bandage, ace bandage type stuff, and when I cover it with epoxy, it's going to be hard as a rock, and I'm telling you for certain it is. All right, here we go. And again, using the using the tongue depressor, I got everything mixed up. Then I grab the brush, and just like I'm painting, I go right over the whole thing. The very tip I leave alone. I don't put anything on there because I want that metal to show off. But everything I'm putting in here, I'm letting it drip, and I'm running it back up, going over and over and over, trying to get a decent coating. And at the end of the day, I think it was 3 coatings that I put on here to get it exactly the way I wanted it. But the first one's always the worst one. It's not going to come out perfect no matter what. So now we're at the top, filling up the hole with epoxy, again using that same brush. I want to try to get as much in there as possible because the threaded rod's going to go in next. Putting it nice and slow, not trying to overfill it. I know some of it's going to spill when I put this in, but I don't want it to go bananas. So you see it coming out. I'm trying to get that excess out. I went a little bit too far. So I'm trying to get some of that out. And as I put it in, I'm turning it just to make sure all the threads get locked in nice and tight. And then this goes in all the way to the bottom. Perfectly. Then I take the brush and just kind of spread it over the handle, knowing again that I have plans for the handle. And the way I finished the handle at the top I thought was in my opinion, a fairly clever way of disguising the fact that this is in fact a sword cane. This is what I ended up doing with that green foam stuff, is I wrapped it around the top right there and used epoxy to hold that in place, as well as the skull. Then I'm using the Dremel tool right here to go in and just kind of shape it most of the way, get a huge chunk of that stuff out of the way. Trying to shape it just right. Get most of this stuff out. Now, at the end of the day, this is all filler, and most people are going to say, well, that's foam, it's going to crush, and I promise you it won't. There's that wrap that's going to go around the whole thing, that first aid wrap I showed you earlier. That plus the epoxy, I'm telling you, you have no idea that there's anything soft underneath it. If anything, all it does is keep the weight down and compensate for the fact that there's a threaded rod going right through the handle. So I think it did more than what I expected it to do. I'm very happy. If I had to do all over again and I was going to do this thing again, I would have done it exactly the same way. Threaded rod through the center, 3/8, or I think it was 1/2 inch. I'm not sure what it was, how big the threaded rod was now. I can't remember. But again, I would have done threaded rod. I would have filled in the gaps with foam or cotton or what have you, and relied on the epoxy to really make that shell that gets developed around it extremely hard and extremely secure. Took it slow, took it easy, did it over the trash can for whatever particular reason I thought was going to hold most of it in. It did, but as you can plainly see, a lot of this stuff is flying in the air, and my ignorant ass isn't wearing a mask. Always wear your safety gear, people. Don't do as I say, not as I do. Apologies for this. And guys, if you like these kind of videos, definitely consider subscribing. If you find this video entertaining, or you're glad I shared with you some of my crazier, older ideas, give me a thumbs up and like the video and let me know. I really appreciate it, and the channel will thank you as well for it. So now I'm getting to the point where it's time to put on a handle, or rather a wrap for that handle, and really try to disguise the collar where the blade is. And you can see what I did is I used some of that bandage I showed you before, and pay close attention to this end right here. I go out of my way to keep the epoxy from going down into that one section, because I want that mating area to be absolutely perfect. So I'm letting everything dry off here. And at the end of the day, when all was said and done, this is what I came up with. Nice coat of matte black paint, painted the skull white, painted the tip white, and you'll see, I think it came out pretty cool. I like it a lot. It's lightweight, still lightweight. I got rid of that stupid spear point bottom that really always drove me crazy ever since I was a kid. And it's in great shape. I love the length of the handle. I like the way it feels in my hand. I still, just jokingly today, I'll sit in a meeting when I'm working from home and listen to the people talk and pick up the stick and pull out the blade. So the way I accomplished this was, you'll see here I've got a little bit of a bevel. I went through and sanded it slightly smooth all the way around, rather gave it a bit of a chamfer. Then I put the handle in, and you'll see there's a little pocket right there. Basically what I did was, where that chamfer was, I put the sword back in the scabbard, wrapped the bottom half with cellophane, then I put one final wrap around the entire handle, over top of where that joint was, filled it up with epoxy, let it dry, and you'll see right here, this, boom, fits perfect. And when you're looking at it, no one knows it's there, and you can shake it, you can move it around. It's not loose. It doesn't really rattle at all. And the cool thing about it is that epoxy, like I mentioned before, makes that socket really thin, because it's really only as thick as the fabric itself, but really rigid and really hard, and it doesn't collapse, it doesn't bend in, and I'd argue that you'd have to use a pair of pliers to crush it. Got it ready to go, and folks, that's it. It came out perfect. I'm very happy with it. I really, to this day, I still have it, but again, I'm going to throw the question back at you. If you guys think this is a cool idea, and you think maybe it's time for a 2020 version of this, my vision would be to tear this thing completely apart, pull the blade out, clean the blade up, get it looking perfect, find one of my saplings that have been drying for the past couple of years, split it, hide a blade inside there, and create the ultimate walking stick. But I need your feedback. You guys got to let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you think it's a good idea. Even better, leave me a comment down below telling me I want to see upgraded version of the hiking stick. Anyway, folks, that's it for my throwback this week. Hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for sticking around this long if you're still here. You all have a great day, and I'll see you soon.